Hey, welcome everybody. That's a new video that Norma worked on in the background, and I'm loving it. Super beautiful and very professional. And welcome the lovely Tamara. Tell us a little bit about yourself, Tamara. I'll let you start off today.
Thank you. Thank you. I am an astrologer who really pivoted during the time period where the whole world changed, because I saw in the astrology leading up to it, there were so many people that were talking about this huge change that was going to happen in the world. And I was so intrigued. I just was leaning forward and leaning in so much in the years leading up to 2020. And then when the world sort of all went indoors, that's when my sister and I started our astrology business, and we have been going nonstop since. We're two biological sisters, and we run a company called WildSkySisters. And this is my biggest passion, is to look at how the world is changing through what I believe is like a treasure map that we left in the stars to foreshadow some of these moments for us so that we can use this time to our greatest expansion.
Yeah, absolutely. Yes, absolutely. And that's, how we connected. And it's funny, it was on Instagram, but it was because of the event you were at. And then I was looking at the event and I'm like, oh, that's really cool. And so I was checking it out. And then somehow you were tagged in there. So then I went over and I'm like, oh, I'm supposed to have a reading with her. I just knew.
Yeah. I actually did a self-marriage facilitation there. And I said at the beginning of the self-marriage facilitation, I'm an astrologer by trade, but I often like to do what the astrology tells me to do. And that right now is like choosing ourselves in such a huge way. Well, we can talk about that, but it's really being able to advocate for ourselves and speak up and let go of any old thoughts of like how to be likable or amenable to the world, and instead it's like time to really advocate. So I feel like that's exactly what you guys do here.
Absolutely. We really love leading people to themselves, right? So empowering themselves, realizing that nobody's going to do it for you. Nothing outside of you is going to shift you for you. So, when we've been, keep saying brainwashed our entire lives through the programming and subconscious programming to look outside of ourselves for that which we desire to fulfill us. And yeah, you hit a point in life where that just doesn't fucking work anymore. Pardon my potty mouth.
But I feel that so much. And I feel like the astrology, so many people sort of sit back and wait for it to happen. And it's like my sister and I always say, like, the astrology is not going to do it for you. It's going to show us what is most supported. And then we have to take that initiative and really make it happen.
Yeah, absolutely. And just today, just today came in little information that has me now believing that actually, so we're not just leading people home to themselves, we're teaching them how to manifest the life that they want. But you got to unpack a little bit and remove some of those beliefs, right? And you're manifesting anyway. So are you going to manifest what you do want, or you're going to focus on what you don't want? And so that's really what's coming forward at this time. So, which has been really, well, I always lead by example. So there you go.
You Leo.
Yeah. Speaking of which, okay, we have a special show today. We've got some people over on Rumble, we've got some on Facebook, and some on YouTube, just so you know, it's across all platforms. And it stays on, so you can grab that link afterwards and share it in your audience if you choose. So I thought today we could tap into Canada first and tap into Canada's astrology, because I haven't even heard this, so this is news to me. And just see what's going on for Canada right now, because there's a lot of people in the world that would really like to know what's going on in this world right now.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I'm going to share this software, and I don't want to scare people into it, but you're all able to see this. You see the Canada chart there?
Now they do. I popped it on the screen.
So there's many different debates around how we look at the astrology when we're looking at people or at countries. And this can be considered mundane astrology. It's more about the bigger picture, the scope of things. And there is some debate over times, but I am, for this purpose, for any astrologers out there, using the midnight chart for July 1st, 1867, which was when Canada created that this dominion that we live under,
Yeah.
which is definitely shifting and what we are here to see. So the first thing is that Canada is considered in this chart an Aries rising. And if we're using this, it again is about being able to pioneer your ideas forward. So if you think about the country, I mean, so many people came here because they wanted to create something for their families. They wanted to pioneer. There are literally people coming over on ships, the first gateway being like the Maritimes, where people could come and pioneer what it is that they're looking for. So right away, I sort of like that astrology chart for Canada. But the biggest thing is that Canada is a Cancer sun, and Cancer suns are all about trying to create the dream for the family. It's a nurturing sign. It's like, how do we create this world so that our lineage and our legacy feels good? The only thing is that Canada has Uranus, the planet Uranus, which is upheaval and transformation and revolution on right exactly conjunct the sun. So at the time that Canada was birthed as a nation, the planet Uranus was like, we're going to be here to create some sort of revelatory understanding. And really, we've seen Canada become that place that you can, over the course of it being what we call it, a place where you can sort of go for your big dreams, and where at times we'll sort of be friendly to everyone in the world, right? For the most part, Canada is someplace that was really liked for a long time. And then when we see some transits happening to different planets in our chart, all of a sudden Canada is getting this like weird rep around the world. I mean, I've traveled a ton, and I always felt typically proud to have a Canadian flag on my backpack.
Right.
And that was something that was like over and over, like people from America would put a Canada flag on their backpack so that they would feel and be welcomed into places. But one of the biggest dates that I just wanted to sort of draw the attention to was in January of 2022, because that's when the trucker convoy started.
Right.
And it's also sort of been this last couple of, I would say, 3 years where we're really like, wait a minute, is this our country? Like, is this who we are? Is this what we're doing here? And so Uranus, what Uranus does in the sky matters a lot to us. So actually, it's 2018 that Uranus first moved into Taurus. And Taurus, just for everybody in general, Taurus is the earth. It's what is steady, what is sturdy, what we can depend on, what we can count on, our finances. Taurus people, as you know them, are quite abundant. They have abundant mindsets. They are here to do the work, right? To toil and do like the step-by-step sort of plans. So right away, when we see Uranus moving into Taurus, we know that our economy is going to be disrupted. We know gas prices are going to go up. We know food security is going to be not secure, because Uranus is that earthquake energy. It's revelatory. And so when Uranus moved into Taurus, all of us astrologers went back to the last time Uranus was in Taurus, which was the 30s, which was the dirty 30s, which was the time period of the Great Depression. So right away, we all knew, like, okay, get ready. There are, periods or echoes that are going to be felt over the next 7 years. Uranus takes 7 years to go through. And it matters more to Canada because we have it right with our sun. And so in 2022, Uranus started to creep up on our Pluto. Our Pluto is here in the middle of Taurus. And I just want to talk about world points, because this is something where we can notice, if you're not even an astrologer, but you can sort of track this. These are times where we're going to see news, is when anything is at 15 degrees of the fixed signs. So 15 Taurus.
15 degrees of the fixed sun. Got it.
15 Taurus, 15 Scorpio, 15 Leo, or 15 Aquarius. We are recording this right now with the sun on 15 Leo. So this is an energy that is strongly, like, when something comes to those, because the fixed signs are attributed to the 4 royal stars, right? The royal watchers, the literal like stars that were so significant. They held the sky up to the ancients, right? Regulus was the royal lion star. There's the bull. They're on tarot cards everywhere. The Aquarian is like the intellectual side of us. The Taurus, the bull, the economy, the financial part of us. The Leo is the lion and shining our hearts. And then, of course, Scorpio is the scorpion who transforms things. So Pluto was already on a world point in Canada's chart, and Saturn's on a world point in Canada's chart. So we know that there's, like, during time periods going to be big storylines happening when something transits these points. And sure enough, in January of 2022, when the trucker convoys came to fruition or started to really take some steam, Saturn was at the 15 Aquarius point, squaring our Pluto and squaring our Saturn. And Uranus was starting to go over our Pluto. Basically, it's the transformation of a nation. It's time for revolution. Uranus brings this desire for us to flip tables. And we don't always have to do it so drastically, but I love humanity because we like to do it drastically. So Uranus came and started to flip a table. And we really saw some of that gaslighting that happened through the nation, some psychological things starting to happen where we were like, what is going on? And Saturn in Aquarius is experimental. It's sort of like the experiment. So at the same time, we were also going through all of the mandates. And I mean, Saturn in Aquarius is literally looking at, it's like a scientist in a lab somewhere who's like, I do want to save humanity, but I'm going to experiment on them first. I'm going to, see what is going to do this. So we were all part of this giant experiment that was happening at this time. Okay. This also was echoing 2020 when the first world started to shut down. When we first started to hear news of it was just around March of 2020. Yes. I was in the airport with like my son who was actually sick that day on my chest when all of a sudden I started seeing like the headlines come up on the screen. And I'm like, oh my God, this is what astrologers have been talking about for decades. Because what it was this big COVID clump, we call it, which is 3 planets in Capricorn, and they all clumped up together. And basically it was like that it's time for the systems as we know it to change. So Saturn, Pluto, and Jupiter were all together in Capricorn. Capricorn is the big systems, the structures that hold up our society, hospitals, healthcare, the government, the school systems, like all those big bones of our society. Mars came along around March and triggered all of that. And those 4 planets together that became sort of what we call the COVID clump. And it began the change that as we know it. It began the breakdown of our country, of all countries, of governments, of the rules. And as we know in Capricorn, sometimes there is this desire to control. This is a shadow side of Capricorn. And so the clenching got deeper at this time. And then in December of 2020, everyone will remember that the world was talking about the Christmas star. This is the great conjunction that was happening between Jupiter and Saturn at 0 degrees of Aquarius. And people, literally everybody, you didn't have to know astrology, everyone was talking about the fact that these two were together in the sky so closely that they actually looked like they were making like a bigger star. Right. And so that solstice, all of us went outside of our homes and looked up at the stars, and we're literally seeing in action the birth of a new cycle. It was like a new 20-year cycle, a new 200-year cycle, a new 1600-year cycle. There's all these cycles that were starting anew in Aquarius. This was like the birth of the true age of Aquarius, which we are in. And the ancients used to believe that whatever constellation had its heliacal rise, meaning it rose just before dawn at the spring equinox, was the time, the age that we were in. It used to be Pisces. We were in the age of Pisces. Now we're in the age of Aquarius. And we've been in that since about the 1500s. So the song is like, I'm like, we've been in it for a long time. But this Jupiter, Saturn coming together at 0 Aquarius, it was like the birth point of it. Here we go. And then March of last year, okay, so coming back up to current times, Pluto then moved into this point. And now if we look at the chart for right now, Pluto is at 0 Aquarius. So now Pluto, the transformer, Pluto is the lord of the underworld. He brings us to the underworld in order to transform us. He is now at that 0 Aquarius point. If we look at Canada's chart, it's in the communities, it's in the broader nation. It's time for us to gather. I mean, everybody has the same dream. We all want to live on land together and have co-housing or have like collaborative living or have projects where we're working together, and we want to bring it back to the micro stage and be able to make our own decisions rather than having be so macro. This is all Aquarius. This is all bringing things so that we can have our financial sovereignty so that we can be in groups where we can, really decide what is right for the smaller group at hand. So it's so important right now to be a part of community, to show up in some way, whether that's like here online, because Aquarius is technology. So it's like building that online community so that we can talk about things and we can solve issues together, but then also really important to stay in our humanness, which is Leo, stay in our heart, stay in that, human to human connection. So Canada is seeing this real change. The one thing I wanted to say as well is that this May, we had a Venus star point happen on our natal Canadian Venus. So what that means is that this is like a resurgence of the feminine rising. And it makes me think that there is going to be someone who is very, Jupiter is on this right now, actually, that is a very prominent female that will step into more of a leadership role within Canada to help us rebirth this next element of who we want to become. But I think that the next 3 years, really until 2027, are going to see more instability, more sort of even natural events that are happening in the world to reconfigure us into the communities we're meant to be in. I don't ever want to create fear. I'm like, this is our time. We were born for this time to come together. And the more that we can be thinking and sort of communicating and connecting and making all of these little points where we go, oh, instead of being scared about this change that's happening, I can phone Tanja up and, talk to her about it. Like, the more that we do that, we really are rebirthing our nation.
Well, and we're rebirthing ourselves first. We're realizing that what many of us over the past few years, right? Like, the heck's been going on in this world, man. And then once you know, you can't unknow, which then brings you here. And of course, with the governments and with everything that went on, there was a lot of fear. It's one of the easiest ways to control population. And so, rising past that fear and going, and I'm so grateful because I've always done extreme sports. And so fear has always been a bit of a friend. I've always said I'm just nervous-sighted. And so this has taken that to another level yet. And it's like, all right, we got this. And so, I'm actually quite excited about this. And I find that fascinating. And as long as it's not Christina Freeland, I'm happy.
Totally. Well, I mean, and there's like this element too, where ultimately Canada wants to come back to that Cancerian nature of like nurturing. Good. And so I do want to see us have that occur. I just think that there's going to be many elements over the next 2 years where sovereignty just is the key piece for me that keeps coming up. Is like, we don't need to be so reliant on political systems if we are becoming more sovereign in our daily lives. So the more and more that we can choose how to do that. And that means like, working in the ways that feel like they make you come so alive that you can't not do it. And I know, like, I was just at Caslo Jazz Fest this weekend and seeing Trevor Hall play his guitar. Like, I just lean over to my girlfriend and said, like, this is the thing. Find the thing that makes you contort around it. You're so passionate about it that every cell comes alive. And that will rebirth this next era of what
find your joy. And many have forgotten their joy, but find your joy. I realized today after I got home and I said to Regine, I said, what's up with you? You're bouncing. You're all weird. And she's like, don't you remember how much your energy affects me? And I was like, flying high. And I'm like, oh yeah. Okay. Sorry. Not
That's
sorry.
Your sun Mars.
All right. Yeah. And so let's tap in. So whoever's just dropping in, here's Tamara and I are having this conversation around some astrology. She's going to pull up the US chart next, and we're just going to tap into that quickly. That was really nice to hear about Canada. And I love the whole, every time I meet a Cancer, I'm like, how many kids do you have?
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, so the very interesting thing about the US chart, which is here, so if people are asking questions, I can for sure answer them later. But the very intriguing thing about the US chart is that the US is also a Cancer sun. That's
why things are so similar. That makes so much sense. Okay.
There's a
in the background doing a head bob.
there's a kinship that is ultimately there between Canadians and Americans, right? Like we can't deny that. The chart that I'm using here is the Sibley chart for the US, for anybody who is watching this. And this chart is also, it's come under so much discussion lately because what is happening in the US is a little different. The US has been going through their Pluto return. And a human, an individual, doesn't get their Pluto return, and astronomically there's still a little bit of a debate whether we've already been through it or we're actually just about to go through it. Rick Levine is an amazing astrologer who talks about that if people want to go look at that. But either way, we're in this long, grueling period of transformation with the US chart where Pluto is coming back to the place it was when the US was born. And this usually in different empires would be sort of considered like the fall of the empire or the resurgence of a new structure that's being built. Pluto for the US is at a point that's very high in Capricorn that speaks to being ruled by the top 1% in some way. And so Pluto moving to Aquarius, that line between Capricorn and Aquarius, 29 Capricorn, is like, get this, is represented by the visual of a secret group of people behind closed doors running the country. That's like the actual visual for 29 Capricorn. And 0 Aquarius is like the fresh new eyes of being reborn into these smaller community groups. What is even more crazy is that the day that Joe Biden dropped out of his race, we had a full moon that was on the Pluto, on 29 Capricorn. So it was on the US's Pluto. And that spoke to the need for this illumination of change, of transformation. And the sun was at 29 Cancer, which is the daughter of the American Revolution. And so whatever you believe about Kamala Harris, like I don't pretend that I think that there's going to be anybody who will save us. But there is this interesting thing that like the daughter of the American Revolution was coming out of the secret society that's meeting behind closed doors and putting the daughter in place. Okay. So honestly, I just sit at home and eat popcorn and go like, oh my God, what's happening? What is crazy is that this next full moon that's coming up on Monday, August 19th is happening on the US's natal moon. So this is a time period when a nation would receive illumination on, you know, who they are. There's this like radical piece where it's literally 5 arc minutes away from where the moon was when the US as a nation was created. And what is even more interesting is this November and December. So we all know that there's going to be an election coming up in November. During that election, Mars will actually be on the US's Mercury, which is like, it can be 2 ways, okay? One can be that there is a flurry of activity to try to, again, Mercury in Cancer is like to feel, to bring back the feeling of the country, to return home. Maybe we all even have to be in our homes at that time. There could be like voting from home, right? A flurry of that. But the other thing with Mars is that it's causing a lot of irritation. It's causing us to go back and recount things. It's maybe even changing the entire thing altogether. Because then Mars is going to go forward here and actually station retrograde on December 6th on the US's North Node. So I'm going to give you the tiniest nodal lesson here. The nodes are places for us to always look at in an evolutionary basis. It's what our soul came to do. So as humans, we look to our North Node and we go, that's what I'm here. That's what my soul came to do. Doesn't know how to do it yet. I literally was born to do that. And I got to bring in what I know best, which is my South Node in order to do that. Our South Node informs us, but like flying out of the baby, I always think of a baby bird in a nest, and the nest is the South Node. It's where we've been born. It's what we do, the skills we have. The North Node is like taking the leap and flying, and we're meant to do that in our life. So for a country, the North Node is what is the US supposed to be? What are they? Why did this nation form? What is it meant to at a soul level? And what is the people who live there at a soul level meant to do? Leo is really about being in the heart. It's about being deeply heart-centered. I mean, yeah, Tanya's like, I know, because I am a Leo. It's about being generous. It's about having a backbone. You know, Leo in medical astrology rules the heart and the spine. So I always think of Cheryl Strayed's wild trip that she hiked the Pacific Coast Trail, and she just was like wildly open to all that trip brought to her. That's what Leo does to us. It opens us up and goes like, this is what I'm here to do. And I'm here to be creative, and I'm here to be passionate, and I'm here to follow my passions. And that's what that's what I believe the US was supposed to be here for. And they've also gotten away from that as we've gotten so capitalistic and in that mindset of like, how can I own this? And what I own owns me. No longer. So Mars is actually coming along December 6th and going to station retrograde directly on top of the US's North Node, saying it's time for us to get back to that. We got to go back, and Mars will go back over Mercury. So this makes me think something with the election, like either won't happen the same way, or we'll have to revisit it in some way, or there's going to be something that resurges during the Christmas months. When you think of it, everyone's at home with their family talking and
Right.
you know, and there will be some sort of revisiting that happens. And then by February, Mars stations direct, very close to the US's sun. And, you know, we've all went through this retrieval of some part of us. In Cancer, it's sort of a soul journey. It's retrieving the remembrance of our emotional well-being, of why it is that we do what we do. And then from February on, Mars marches forward. So these next 6 months are massive in the US's chart, and really highlighting places in the chart that are very, very much about the people. The moon is about the women in the US and the feminine qualities of like, how are we going to do this going forward? And all I want is for someone to like step in and say like, enough is enough. This is ridiculous. We've gone way past our knowledge. It's time for us to get back to the heart and to homes and to families. And that's what I hope that this astrology brings. But I'm sure there's going to be quite the circus to watch.
Oh, yeah. And we do believe that that's what's happening. Let's pull off this screen. And I find that so fascinating with the points, right? Like, it's just fascinating that we have a cosmic clock, right? Like this, I think it's how the universe runs, is by this big clock. And it's affected by new stars coming in. Welcome, Norma Jean. I can see you're just vibrating, and you have something you want to add, say, ask?
It's like you said, it's a beautiful thing to be able to come to a space and place where when you see what you see, you can't unsee. But what happens is when we look at history, and for myself, you know, the one thing, you know, you're speaking to about the U.S. and where it's at, and really hearing the profoundness of what that really signifies is that, you know, in 1776, the U.S. was formed. And you said it was at 29 degrees. Well, when you take 9 and 2 and you add it together, you get 2. So given the, you know, the things that took place during that process of evolution is when they took the singularity and they split it, when you look at the 11, as to how I perceive this. So to look at, you know, the historical value of everything that's taken place up to this point, it's profound that I am so grateful to be here to witness and to see what takes place, because, you know, when it was formed, to be able to understand it at the level that I've come to understand it is to understand that America was that new world order at that time. And what took place was, you know, there was one of two ways for that to take in blossom or become. And that's where, you know, the nefariousness began to come in, and you had that 1% that was, you know, wanting to, you know, be at the top of that pyramid, so to speak. And so it's profound. And like I said, this is not even about a fear thing. In all actuality, is when you learn your history, you understand it the way that it is. History repeats itself from a certain particular period in time. And 1776 was that time, and it kept repeating itself, given, you know, the things that were taking place and the wars, and how more and more as time went on, more and more people become separated in their views and not understanding that. That's when we begin to split our own consciousness, much less the consciousness of the collective. So this is the time that I see that all this is coming back, and I can feel it. I can tell, because it's within me. And with that, it's so profound to be able to have someone as gifted as yourself, Tamara, to come on here and be able to express that in a way that others will be able to step back and be able to have a different perspective about this. And, you know, this is profound. This is a beautiful time. No matter how ugly it may seem, when we're able to step out of it and be observers of what's taking place and understand the beauty that is becoming of this, that when we begin to see that within us first, we'll definitely be able to start understanding how it begins to show up in our environment. Because when we begin to bring ourselves back together, we bring those two that were separated and brought back together as one. There is that time of the matriarchy, and this is the time of the patriarchy. Now it's the time for the two to come back together and to become and do so much more than we could ever possibly just fathom. And as Tanya was speaking to, we got to get back to the purpose that brought us here to begin with. And that purpose was the joy and the excitement of the love to come here and be a part of this.
You literally just spoke directly to, so the soul journey through 2020, the North Node was in Gemini at the time that this all broke out, where it was literally the two, what you're talking about. Finding it, like in Gemini, everyone's a researcher, everyone's a scientist, everyone's like, oh, I got articles to show you about this, everyone. But it was all about finding those two ways of thinking, but also tertiary thinking, that there is a third that comes from us doing those two. But Norma Jean, what you just spoke to is that this next year, the North Node is actually coming back to Pisces, which is the oneness. Like, it's literally
Christ consciousness
and compassion and Christ consciousness and love and unconditional love, and being able to take those two concepts and go, wait a minute, like, what does it really matter? What matters is this piece within me that's looking for the beauty and the joy and the love. So you just articulated it exactly, but there is like the astronomy to back it up.
Right? It's just, oh, it's so beautiful and profound. It's given what I can see, and so much of that comes through the world that I am, the world that I've come to know about me, and being able to release those chains and to find that ability to know that the meeting place is here. The meeting place is here for the feminine and the masculine, where it comes to one, to the being and the soul that I am. And in that expression, it's that harmonization. It's a beautiful, beautiful dance that takes place. And, that's all I've been expressing this whole time. All I want to be able to do is express to you who I am and how I perceive this, to give you the chance and opportunity, each and every individual that's been watching from this point, to give you back to you.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And to become the best version of you can be.
Yeah. Absolutely. And I think that's the thing about the astrology that really helped me, as like, I was quite like a masculine, logical thinker. My whole life, I was like focused. Yeah. I'm like, you guys know anything about that? Just really like intellectually focused and inspired. And what astrology helped me to do is to see in all of this, when the world started to get crazy. For me, my awakening happened like 19. So it was a lot earlier than this, but I feel like it prepared me for 2020 when everything happened. And I had to go back into my reserves of, I am the microcosm. Whatever is happening out there is also happening in here. And so if I am trying to control, or if I am trying to intellectually be, in the righteous side of things, like, then that of course is going to be reflected to me. And so for me, what 2020 was actually the most beautiful time. It was like a moment where everybody in my life sort of, while there was warring that I knew was happening, a lot of people were kinder to each other, and they were, treating each other lovely, and we were getting together face to face, whether it was like, in groups of 1 or 2 or whatever. And it was like this moment where we all were reckoning with the bigger picture of our lives. And I had personally been waiting for that. I was like, I'm part of the Pluto and Scorpio generation. I'm like, let's burn this all up. Like it's time. It's time for us to move to a more heart-centered existence. But astrology helped me to like move into that feminine piece that does take hands off a little bit more and is more in the heart and is more open and receptive and creative. And I think that's what we're going to need now is we're going to go through a renaissance of ideology where it's like we can make anything happen with our lives right now. We live in a world where we can like, we're going to start to see the next 5 years, people flying flyable drones. They're already like thinking of that. It's like going to be the Jetsons. What do we want that to look like? You know,
right?
If we create that power and that magic, what do we want it to look like? And so astrology for me is just like that map. And there's so many of them. There's there's all these tools that we have to be able to map back and be like, whoa, this is my soul print. This is who I am underneath all of it. It's not the label astrologer. It's not even like the name necessarily Tamara. It's this bigger thing that is my soul, right?
Yes.
Yeah,
yes.
Absolutely. And that's super beautiful. Yeah, the more you know, the more you unpack, the more you understand. It's like being on the best adventure game ever. And it's like, oh, I got another really good clue. Let me share the clue I got.
Totally. That's exactly what it is. During eclipse season, I encourage everybody this eclipse season, especially September 12th-ish to October, I'm going to say like October 6th, okay? Because the eclipses are the 17th and October 2nd. During eclipse season every year, I always joke that it is like you get on this ride, the portal opens, weird stuff starts to happen. I mean, the ancients used to think of eclipses as times of great auspiciousness. So they would stay indoors. They would sort of watch it with like, you know, or like it would be the middle of the day and all of a sudden it'd be dark. Like birds would stop chirping. Everything would go dark. I mean, you can't help but be in this like awe and reverence of this ride. And I just am like, pop the popcorn. 2 times a year, we get a front row seat to the movie that is our lives. Let's watch it and enjoy. And you know what? When the hard times come, it makes it more, you're more able to zoom out and see the bigger view and build that community together where the hard times get divided by how many people we have there that are going through it, and we can help each other so much more easily. So I just love it too. I also just heard that someone was making an astrology escape room where you can like go into one of those exit rooms and get clues. And I'm like, oh my God, it's so exciting. So, I mean, yeah, we all need games and fun and laughter right now.
Absolutely. Yes. Speaking of games and fun, before we go along too far, and we've got about 20, 25, 30 minutes left, I wanted to let you explain, Tamara, what your service is. You got your sister, you're doing astrology readings, but you do a little bit more than that. Can you expand on that, please?
Yes. So within WildSkySisters, my sister and I, who are biological sisters, we started to really deepen our experience of ancestral astrology. So we run a 6-month program where we take people through the experience of their family tree, but through the charts. So it's like making a family tree of astrology natal charts. And I mean, I have mine like on my wall. And so if you feel this like connection to this great grandmother who lived in Switzerland that you never even met and you don't know why, but you like keep hearing her name. And then you look at your charts and you're like, we had the exact same Venus. We were both redoing the feminine for our families. All of a sudden things make sense. Or if you think of like the uncle that had a really hard time and, you know, maybe carried on the addiction in the family legacy. And then you look and you see what he was going through in his chart. It's like he was meant to be the black sheep to help pivot the family line. Like there's so many ancestral patterns that come to light when we look at the charts. So Inferno is one of our programs with WildSky, and we love doing it. This year, we're also adding the Eclipse Support Group. We run this 3-week program every eclipse season, and people can come. You get 10 minutes every day of like, hey, good morning. Here's what's going to go on today. And, you know, you sort of get a little bit more tuned into it so that you're less dramatically attached to what is happening during that time period. And we can all chat about it together. And then personally, I sort of do what the astrology tells me to on the other side of that. And so I'm also a life celebrant. I do weddings and I am a death doula. So I actually incorporate death into my weddings work. in that I encourage couples who come together to first do a self-marriage ceremony to be in that wholeness and that hieros gamos, the sacred union within before, because I started to marry people who I was just nervous that they were like so willing to do anything for their partner, but so willing to abandon themselves. And then we do a death ceremony before they get married, where we let who they were die and move into who they are becoming.
Beautiful. That's actually really beautiful. Thank you for sharing that. And like I said, as soon as we chat, I was like, oh yeah, we need to see more of you. So very excited to chat more. Yeah, I think this is just the beginning. And then before we get into more questions, because I know Norm's got a 4:44. I already put my fingers up, but I'll say it for everyone that's watching. It's a numbers game. It's part of the game of life.
Do. We just like up leveled something by noticing that.
Right? Right? Yep. Do you want to pop up my SolarReturn so you can give a little example for everyone so they can see what that's about?
Yes, I do.
All right, I'll put this back up, but we don't want to remove that. We want to enter that. Oh, I know what I need to do. I think I need to do, sorry guys. There we go.
Amazing.
I'm like,
so I pulled this earlier today, Tanya, and your SolarReturn, although your birthday is today, your SolarReturn was actually yesterday at 4:48 a.m. So
awesome. I could feel it all day yesterday.
Always fun to see that. So the SolarReturn is the most well-known transit, astrology transit that I teach. It's when the sun comes back to the point it was when you were born. And so Tanya was born at 14 degrees of Leo, 30 minutes. Again, that's a world point. So when something happens, when I see a planet or a point at 15 of the fixed signs, I know that that person has a role to play in this world that is going to affect or impact a broader audience. So Tanya, that's you. So no matter what, your SolarReturn kind of has this extra oomph to it. But this year specifically, when we pull a SolarReturn chart, we're looking to see what house the sun is in. And that tells astrologers, okay, this is going to be the area of your life that really gets a magnification. So for Tanya, this year, you're a Leo rising, meaning that the sun's right there in your first house. The part of your life that gets the magnification is literally your physical self, your raison d'etre, your reason for being. Like, this is you in a nutshell. This is you putting on these new sunglasses this year that are far more even solar powered than ever before. It could really impact the way you see the world, even that you see it more in that Leo light, that you see it more with your heart, you know. And in your natal chart, you have the sun and Mars conjunct. So in your SolarReturn chart, you actually don't have Mars with your sun, which means that you can maybe even slow down a tiny bit. Leo wants to slow down and enjoy life, right? It's a fixed sign. So it's just like Taurus in that it wants to slow down a little bit and really be like super present in everything that you're doing. What's exciting is that Mars and Jupiter are together in your house of community. So literally what you're doing with your community, YouTube, Rumble, all of the places, Gemini is that alternative forms of media or the ways we express, get our word out. The 11th house is the community. It's getting it out to a broader audience, to a bigger group of people. So Mars and Jupiter is considered the hero's journey. It's going on this expansive mode. It can really blow things up. So get ready. Because this is like, okay, everyone wants to hear from you. And I say this when the live was at 44. So that is radical. And Uranus is right at the top of your chart. This is the house of how you show yourself to the world. Uranus being there at such a high degree of Taurus is like, we're really ready for Earth to change. Like, we're ready for the big things that we thought would never change to actually change, which might be your career changing, big, shifts happening, a little bit of table flipping, if you will. Maybe there's a bit of chaos in because Taurus doesn't want to change. So there's this little resistance, but when it does change, it's for the better. It's for that soul material. And then finally, the North Node in Aries is up here with your MC in the 9th house. This is an international audience. This is traveling. This is getting your word out to a broader group. Again, this is like something in this is like either people from overseas finding you or you putting yourself and your identity out and like connecting with this international group. It's also divination, the house of like the higher mind. And so maybe publishing a book or publishing something, you know, bigger out to the world that tells the world authentically who you are, because Aries is just straight up like, here's who I am and take it or leave it, really. The last piece is that the moon is also what we look at in the solar return chart. And so where the moon is where we may have an experience changes. So the moon is here kicking it with Venus and Mercury. This is like this beautiful little group. They're having like a little feminine party. Mercury is considered non-binary, but Venus and the moon are both the feminine. So it's like this really fun party where they're like, hey, like we have these new talents. Why don't I show the world them? And Virgo is like your talents of things that you craft from physical earth, or it's like tinctures or herbs or priestess vibes, it's money, you know, and it's like you're finally ready to maybe have like, I see you with like this flowing kimono on you or something. You're like, I've never dressed like this before, but I'm finally ready to do it. And also it could be like your monetary situation being more feminine and calling, like magnetizing to you, calling it in. Virgo is yin. It's not having to go out and do it so hard.
Right.
So
exactly.
That's the solar return chart for you.
I attract versus chase.
That's right. It's like, call it in. These two are just having a party. Whatever you decide and you're talking about. I mean, the three of us are having a party right now. I feel like this could be remnant of this Virgo party, right?
Oh, yeah.
And it's like we just get to shine who we are. We get to be really, again, Virgo is like quite sacred. The energy is really here to serve and to be efficient and to want to help. So it's like the three of us getting together to be like, listen, like you're not alone and we're here to help. And then those resources can come to you that you need rather than you having to go out and get it.
Yeah, beautiful. Awesome. Thank you for that. So that's a little tiny sample. And not only did I have a reading, Norma had a reading, my daughter's had a reading. She says, thank you for sending the other recording, because we had a little oops. And I just wanted everyone to know that it's quite profound. So shiny, happy people. It's quite profound to have that reading. And you know what really got me in the first point was when you gave me my last year and you told me what had been going on in my last year. And I was like, I wish I knew this a year ago. But you know what? It just is.
Absolutely. And you know, it can validate so much for us. Like, honestly, there just comes these points where we're like, right. I mean, I knew I was undergoing some sort of cycle, and what astrology does is goes, we also know it's going to end at some point. This too shall pass. It should be the astrology tagline, right?
Yeah, absolutely. It looks like a Shelly Yardley showing up. Yeah.
Yes.
Tell her to sit down and pop on and say hi.
I'm fixing to. Well, I got you.
Right there.
All right. Well, I got you. I have a question for you, okay? Or I've got something to make a statement, so that way you can express this to others as far as what I'm about to speak to. So for my reading and still always just taking in information and you know, diving a little more deeper into the horoscopes and you know, in astrology and how all of it works together, and that, you know, this is just a clock within itself. But knowing that back in the day, whenever they utilized this, it was from a positional place, like whenever the watchers, because that's what they were called, watchers. So, and then on top of that, they utilized the 45 degrees in order to be able to read each section as the watchers would sit there, you know, and this was for the sun and the moon so much more then. So it was positional reading for more of what the tribe, in utilizing it for more of, you know, agriculture and you know, and when the you know, the cattle and things like that would, you know, mate, and how the tribe would do what they needed to take care of themselves. So, but in more of that reading, I come to find that on our horoscope, well, the astronomy part of it, of, you know, bringing in our own unique, what am I trying to say here? Me being an Aries, I'm a cardinal sign. So you have cardinal, fixed, and mutable. So how does any of that, especially that part, how does it work into how you do your astrological reads? Because I know that even though it gets read clockwise, everything's moving counterclockwise.
Yeah, there's primary and secondary motion. So our Earth is tilting at the same time as we're moving. Yes. So there's like two motions that happen, but the cardinal fixed mutable piece is amazing to just look at your chart from that point. So the solstices and equinoxes are cardinal, right? 0 degrees Cancer is the summer solstice. 0 degrees Aries is the spring equinox. 0 degrees Libra is the fall equinox, which is what I was born on. And then 0 degrees Capricorn is the winter solstice. And these are the initiatory seasons. So they initiate spring, summer, winter, fall. And so these are the signs and the energies and the seasons when the ancients who are watching this would be initiating the next activity that they need to do. They would be planting in the spring. They would be, worrying about like for the winter, how they were going to winter, those kinds of things. They would be initiating the season along with that seasonal astrology. In the middle, the fixed signs, right, which we had talked about, Taurus, Scorpio, Leo, Aquarius, those are the middle of the season. So the ancients, the watchers would be watching those fixed royal stars and they would be seeing, oh, okay, it's Taurus season. It's abundant time. It's time for us to be plowing the fields. Hopefully the rains would be coming because water was seen as very abundant. It would be times for us to be more in things. And that's why people who have fixed signs are more, they're who you want on your team. I'm like, everybody needs a Taurus on their team. Everybody needs a Scorpio on their team. We need these energies who are like really deeply able to get stuff done, be in it. And then we get the mutable signs, Gemini, Pisces, Virgo, and Sagittarius. And these are the signs and the seasons when we're starting to change to the next one. And this is like the energy. My sister always explains this so funny. Cardinal is like packing for a trip. It's like you're getting everything ready. You're making your plans. Fixed is being on the trip. You're like in it. You're having fun. You're there. Mutable is the way that you pack to go home, which is never. You pack to go on the trip. And it's like that mutable seasons, those mutable signs, they're here to sort of stir things up. And, in Pisces season, we see the melt. We see that things are starting to change shape so that it can fertilize for Aries season. And so really, I think going out and seeing the sky with your eye and being deeply meshed in what is truly happening in the sky is so, so valuable. It's like what we're really here to do. And on that, we're going into the Lionsgate portal, which is actually just the heliacal rise of the star Sirius from the pyramids in Egypt. And it might be happening right now as we're speaking because it's tomorrow already in Egypt. And that heliacal rise, the ancients, the watchers would see Sirius. This is the first day Sirius would come pre-dawn. And that would indicate that the flooding of the Nile was about to happen and bringing abundance to the crops. And the crops would actually have water to grow. And then everybody would actually be able to grow their crops and have abundance, prosperity. So that is exactly like the best example of the watchers being able to go and say, oh my gosh, you guys, like they would run home, right? And be like, Sirius, they wouldn't know it's like 8/8. They'd run home and be like, Sirius has been, the flooding is going to come. Like we're about to have this. And it's so valuable to know that. So thank you for that question, Norma. I hope that answers your.
Absolutely. And Tamara meet Ashala meet Tamara. Yeah, we may have to do an astrology tarot combo. That would be fun.
It is fun. That is really, yes. The symbology, the way they move together. I mean, gosh, we had it all figured out like 5,000 years ago.
Yeah, right. Right. Awesome. Do you have any other questions, Norma?
Well, it comes down to, of course, this is whenever, in the Brahma, it talks about, the manifestation and the non-manifestation periods. But of course, my mind doesn't just come to understanding the cardinal and the fixed and the mutable, because that's, the way you express it and explain it, it's profoundly beautiful. I love your knowledge. Mm-hmm. However, I'm the type, I like to take it all the way down as far as I can, because that's just how I do these things, because I'm always having these conversations in my head. So I bring it down to that minute of the clock in which we live by, given where we are. So between, say, 9 and 3 o'clock, and this is a way that it was being presented to me, is that between 9 and 3 o'clock, and this is when we're talking about the sun time, I feel that this is a time of manifestation. This is when we're at our highest and our greatest peak of our imagination in its most peak performance. And knowing that first thing in the morning is kind of almost like, that dawn time, where, you're first waking up, you're coming out of beta and you're going out of alpha into beta and all that. So it just takes us back to, everything that's been taking place because of them creating schools and ensuring that we're there at a specific time in our classes by a specific time. And most of it was within 15 minutes of 9 o'clock. And usually, and then by 3 o'clock. So what I've come through is that it's like, this is our time of, we're at our highest peak of creativity because we're being illuminated.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Like there's so much to that. You're talking about like planetary hours and the ascendant that is always shifting every 2 hours. And there's actually different times that are really good for different things. There's different planets that rule different hours. And so if you're launching something, that is more lunar or domestic or feminine or more inner, like doing it at 7 p.m. might be the best thing. Some people go through their cardinal times on their own, like geographical natal chart. They might go through their cardinal times at like 1 a.m, which can be really confusing. Why some people are like, I'm such a night owl, I just can't help but stay up. There's also a lot of, thought around your birth time being a time that you are most like best suited to doing outward things, because that was actually the time of day that you come out. So I think that you're right. And there's something to be just said about witnessing sunrise and seeing that. I call the moment of sunrise is like the call to prayer, right? It's like very sacred. And then after that, the day starts to take off and crest into when the sun is the highest in the sky. And that's everybody's MC on their chart, is the highest point in the sky when they were born, whether it was night or day. What was that highest point? And then like the sun setting, that 7th house feel, the rest of the sun, it brings us all down. And so being able to work with that rhythm, like Ayurveda was one of the practices that really worked with that too, is like getting your own rhythm, being able to sort of partner it with your chart and see what works best. Because for me, it's actually like, I'm a bit more of an evening person. I come alive at certain times, and then there'll be phases where like, I love Sunday mornings. I mean, I was also just having a very powerful sun in my chart, having sun in first house. I'm like, I love Sundays. They're ruled by the sun. I love that energy, So yeah, there's so much to be thought about within that daily rhythm and being able to tune to it. I'm just looking outside at the sky and like.
Now,
Beautiful.
do you find have you seen that it seems as though, because T and I was talking about this the other day and we kind of brought it up. Does it seem to you that the sun seems to be, that the time seems to be ahead of the sun being at its highest point? It's almost like it's within a 2 or 3 hour ahead, that we're actually not keeping to, human time compared to our astrological time that's taking place, and being able to recognize that the sun is actually at its peak, not at the time that we're actually at in what you call watch time.
Totally. And the precession of the equinoxes has moved us off of the exacts that were like, we move about 72 years, we move a degree. So like where some of the royal stars were, like Regulus used to be at 29 Leo. Now it's at actually 0 Virgo. It's actually moved a degree, and since a lot of the studies about it came out and that kind of thing. So there's a lot of confusion for people over real sky and tropical astrology. We study an astrology that is based on the seasons. It's tropical Western astrology. And it really has not as much to do with the constellations or the real sky. Although we still see like where things are, right? When it comes to solstices and equinoxes, we know that the sun is going to be at 0 Cancer, 0 Aries, etc. But you're right. We've gotten way off of the clock of what the ancients would have tracked, way off of it. Right. And even if you look at our months, like October, Oct is 8, but it's the 10th month. It's like, what? It should be the 8th month. September, Sept, it should be the 7th month.
Right.
And so when we talk about the new year, we always talk about the spring equinox. Ange and I, like my sister and I, and we do year ahead readings. We're starting to position them more towards the spring equinox, because January 1st is not a day when we're like actually supposed to be outward. It's the solstice energy. We're inward, we're quiet. why are we going out partying? Like, why are we going out and celebrating? It just doesn't make as much sense. Even to do it more at the solstice would make sense, because that's still kind of Sagittarius season, the festival of light. So we are totally off of, that natural time, but I think we're all remembering our way home in it.
Yeah,
Beautiful.
absolutely. Beautiful. And let's end it on that. Yeah, so Shala, we're so grateful you're here. Shala's come to stay the night before she heads to the island. Yeah, you'll see her on here soon, everyone. And yeah, we're going to go have some salmon for dinner, which is very West Coast. Nice and light, some homemade potato salad and some salads. And Tamara, I do look forward to meeting you in person at some point.
I know. I'm like, can I join the birthday dinner? Not this year, but
well, Shala's from Kamloops, so Shala's from Kamloops. This is a small world. Yeah.
That is 2 hours from you.
Yeah, absolutely. So, all right. Sending much love to everyone. Have a beautiful night. Stay for 1 minute, Tamara, and we'll chat while we're off. And yeah.